Morning. So I've just gotten back into some RC stuff here. Recently I dug out my old 10th scale Axial. It's a Scorpion AX10, one of the almost ready to run kits from about 10 or 15 years ago. And then while looking at some stuff on Amazon, I saw an ad for these FMS Power Wagons, and I thought it looked pretty cool, so ordered one, gave it a shot, and actually it was pretty impressive. And for 150 bucks, you know, you just can't beat it. And so I got that one, I got my wife one, I got my daughter one, and I bought myself a second one, and that's both of mine sitting there. And then after I got that, and I picked up, kind of got the fever for these little bitty rock crawlers. I got the little red Bronco, and then the Team Associated truck I found at a local hobby shop. And since then I've ordered two more off Amazon, the Deadbolt and the Jeep Gladiator. So I'm going to kind of go through these and do a little bit of a comparison between all of these, because there's, you know, 5 different trucks here and they are all very different in their own way. And I've done some mods to a couple of them, nothing super, but you know, some of the things I've done to them, you know, really helped out, and some of them were just a waste of money. And we'll go through that right now. So let's start with the FMS Power Wagons. Okay, so obviously I did not go with the little roll bar that came on it. So let me move my tripod. I made this little wooden bed to go on there. The things that I don't like about these is how hard the body is to get on and off. There's 2 snaps under the body, one here, one there, and 2 up front. And you got to be really particular about how the wires are in there when you're putting the body on, or you'll end up pinching wires. So I'm going to pop the body off of this one, and it's a pain in the butt to get it off. So what I did is I undid the wires from the hood right here and just zip tied them all up in a bunch right on the front of the frame. And that's the wires that usually bunches up on top of the receiver and prevents the body from going down all the way. I put a twist in this and tuck it in between the transmission and the servo. I put Velcro on the battery holder and put the other side of the Velcro on the battery, and just tuck the battery in there. And you just kind of tuck all the wires up high so that it doesn't bind into anything when you're putting the body on. And then when you flip it over, just make sure you're not catching any wires around these snaps here. And the front usually goes right in. Okay, so this one, I ordered some of the brass weights. Ordered the ones for the rear by mistake. I thought I was getting the front ones, but I ordered the rear. So I'm going to have some of the front ones coming along soon. I don't really know that this really made much difference, other than it changes the center of gravity and makes it lower. So this is a hard body on this. So it's not really top heavy because the stance is pretty wide. So it's a well-balanced truck. It's not prone to flipping over or anything. And the tires, all those simple tractor tire looking wheels, they actually grip pretty good. And we bought 4 of these trucks, so as a result, the spare tire that comes with it, I have 4 tires, a whole set. And I've actually used these on the Deadbolt right there, and they worked good. So if you got anything that uses a 60 millimeter tire that can pull them, then they'll work on it. Yeah, they don't look half bad. And kind of a plain old school looking wheel. But they go good on the Power Wagon. So the one thing that I did find that is the weakness in these is the pinion gear in the rear end. So if you're driving it along in low gear, the low gear is really strong in these trucks. And it has the power to destroy its own drivetrain. So let me dig this out here. This is one of the axles from this truck. So here's the inside of the rear end. There's your ring gear, and then the pinion gear is in here. Alright, you can see the crack in it, it's split. Alright, also one of the other problems is the shaft it's a round shaft with a single flat spot. The gear just slips on that, and then there's a countersunk bevel head Allen screw that holds it on. do not over tighten that screw. Obvious reason why. Don't make the mistake I did and gorilla torque it. Just snug it down. Put some black RTV on the threads as Loctite. Do not use Loctite. Loctite will make plastic brittle. This gear apparently is brittle enough as it is. It doesn't need any help. So, back to the shaft. The shaft only has one flat spot on it. So this gear does not have a very aggressive connection with the shaft itself. So the shaft can spin in the gear. So just be mindful of that. There are metal gears available for it, but everything for this truck has to come straight from China. So you're looking at about a week and a half to 2 weeks of getting parts for it. I already got the rear axle for this one, and that's a new axle in this one right here. Second thing, everybody wants the metal gears for the hop-up, for the portal axles. Okay, yep, that is a very good idea. So I ordered a set of metal portal gears. Had to come from China. Got them on Amazon, but they come from China. And when they got in, I took my portals apart, and guess what? It already had metal gears in it. So apparently that is now standard equipment because they had so many problems with the plastic ones stripping out. So I checked my other 3 trucks. All 3 of them have metal portal gears. So now I got some cute little fishing sinkers. So let's move on to the next truck. This one is bone stock, other than the wooden bed, which I changed it up a little bit and put some cute little foam pumpkins in there. Now, these are all glued together, but they're just glued down to an index card, and they fit in not loose but not tight. So this is kind of fun to go rock crawling and see if you can do it without spilling the load of pumpkins out. On these, be careful of your snorkel. It will come off and you'll lose it. Super glue it in. I had to buy one. Came from China, 2 weeks. So, so far everything else seems to be pretty straightforward on these. They're good little trucks. And treat it nice and it'll be nice to you. So, let's move on to this one. This is the Team Associated Element 24. It's a good little truck for what it is, but not my favorite. It has the little driving lights on the front, but they're hooked up with the throttle. When you turn the truck on, they don't just come on and stay on. They get brighter as you accelerate. So the tires, nice tread, big lugs, really soft, but they're just really small. If you compare it to the tires, say, that comes on this Bronco, you can see the difference. It's a huge difference. So it gets stuck a lot. And the differential is huge. So you really don't have much ground clearance underneath it. It gets high centered a lot. So it's not really high off the ground. I would not really consider this a true rock crawler. I mean, for what it is, it does go over some pretty gnarly stuff. And I switched the body out. This is the body that came on it. It was cool, but I don't know, it just wasn't me. So I found this little Willis truck body. It's kind of neat. This thing looks like it's got a shit-eating grin on its face. So, yeah, this looks mischievous. Painted OD green, made it look like a little military truck. This one uses a 1-cell battery. I don't know if you can see it. I got it velcroed up into the back, right up in there. And there's the plug-in for it. This one, the throttle, it doesn't slow crawl as good as the Axials. Once you get it rolling, you can back off of the throttle. So let's pull the body off of this. This one has a very good, neat mechanical setup on it. I like the way it's laid out. I wish it had a little more ground clearance. So you have the motor up front. The steering servo is mounted to the frame. So you do get a little bump steering, and when you compress the suspension, the differential does hit the servo arm right there. So it kind of pivots right there on that servo arm, if you can see that. So you have your motor and your transmission here. The separate drive shaft goes down to the transfer case. Set up kind of like a real truck, except for the transfer case would be bolted to the back of the transmission. But you have this little dog bone here. It goes to the transfer case and then down to your drive shafts. And it has 4-link suspension front and rear. So it seems to be a pretty tough truck. It works good for what it is. This was only 89 bucks. You just can't beat it. And you can put other bodies on it like I did. And you can upgrade different shocks. The one thing that I hated on this one is whenever you the springs were so soft on it, whenever you drive it, it would just lean all the way over to one side. It was very, very, very sensitive to torque. So what I did is I took a carbon fiber arrow shaft. And let's see if we can get right up here and see this. And I cut out some little sections about 1/4 inch long, and I cut a gap in it. I pulled the spring down, slid this over the shaft, made shock shims basically, and just put a 1/4 inch preload on all the suspension, and that did the trick. No more torque rolling from throttle. So that's that one. Like I said, it works good for what it is, for what you pay for it. It's a fun little truck. Okay, the next one I got was this one. Actually, I got this one before the Team Associated. All right, this one's really cool. All right, the hard body has a lot of nice detail in it. It has headlights on it. It has driving lights. You can turn the headlights on and off and make them flash. I don't know why they did that, flashing headlights, but oh well. You can use that if you want to. This one has Velcro for the front body mount and a hinge on the back. So that's kind of cool, quick and easy. I hate body pins. This one though, because of this hard plastic shell on top, it makes it a little top heavy. So every time I tried to crawl through something, it would get at least a little bit of angle on it and it would just roll off. That and the suspension was really soft. So once it was leaning, then the body would lean and compress the shocks on one side, and it would give it that much more angle. Even though the axles were not leaned that much, the body was leaned more. And the body would rock a lot, bouncing on the springs. So that made it difficult. If you went through something too fast and the body started rocking, it could give you the momentum that you needed to roll off the hill and start rolling over. So what I did is, first thing is I put shims on the springs, stiffened up the springs a little bit. That helped a little bit, and after I did that, I was waiting for a set of oil-filled shocks to come in. So if you shop on Amazon, you see a lot of stuff made by Injora, I-N-J-O-R-A. They make a lot of stuff for these little trucks, and so far I've had pretty good luck. Have not had any bad parts from them, and everything seems to be made pretty good. So I've got a lot of Injora stuff pretty much for my hop-ups. This one also did the Injora tires and wheels. The tires are not Injora, these are something else, but these are the Mickey Thompson Baja MTZ, and those things really grip good. I really like them. The tread is really aggressive, big lugs, and they're really soft, and you can run these without foam inserts in them. The Injora wheels have like a 4mm offset, so it actually makes the truck sit wider, and that gives you, the wider the stance, the less prone it is to tipping over. So with the oil-filled shocks, these came with 3 different springs, and I used the lighter spring. The lighter spring was still much stronger than the originals. So now, there's no rocking. It did limit how much the body rolls when you're on the side of a hill, and just that modification, the tires and wheels and those shocks, turned this into a really nice little crawler. Now, because it is smaller tires, it is limited of some of the stuff that it can go over, and I do not have the high clearance suspension links on any of these. So when they get high centered, that they get high centered. You could get better clearance with the links, but I've done fine without them. The only other mod I did to them was the brass diff covers. Yeah, that adds a little bit of weight, but other than it looking cool, I don't really see that really did much difference by itself. When you start adding brass parts, it's the accumulation of a lot of brass parts that actually does you any good. If you're just going to do one part, you're pretty much wasting your time. You need an accumulation of heavy parts down low, keep your center of gravity low. This one could benefit from having aluminum axles or brass axles, brass steering knuckles, anything suspension-wise or wheel-wise that you can put weight into. That's where you want it. You want all your weight down low. And this one has a lot of weight up top because of the hard plastic body and all these little accessories on top. They look cute and everything, but they make this truck top heavy. So out of the box, this one is more of a trail truck more than a rock crawler. But in the next video, I'm going to do a follow-up on this. I'm going to actually show some of these doing some rock crawling in my front yard in my little rock piles. And I don't have anything to compare it to before, but there it is. It works good now. Now this one is kind of my project truck. This is the Deadbolt. What I wanted to do with this one is take a axial and make it climb as good as the FMS Power Wagon, one of those. So I wanted the axial because they're tougher as far as the drivetrain. And these use a worm gear and a brass gear inside versus the plastic ring and pinion gear. So what I did with this one is I ordered a set of portal gears off of Amazon, and I actually went through 2 other sets of portal axles before I got to these. And these are a replacement of the second set. The second set, the threads were boogered up in the holes where the shocks go on. And I'm going to show you something on these in a minute that if you put these on there, you have to be careful. So these, I don't remember what the brand name is, some weird letters on Amazon, but get a good look at them. These are brass portal covers with a brass diff cover, and they only have 2 screws holding on the brass diff cover or portal covers. So that's a pretty good identifier. There's only one style of this axle on Amazon that has that. These do not have a gear reduction in the portals. The FMS Power Wagons do. Those have a gear reduction. Also, when you put portal axles on, now your drivetrain rotation has been reversed. So you'll have to go in and reverse the polarity on the motor, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. So basically on this one, I've not done any shocks on it. I did the portal axles. I did the Endura deep dish steel wheels, and I did the Endura rock terrain tires. And these are 56 millimeter. The stock tire was 55 millimeter. I tried some 62 millimeter tires on it, these, and man, these things really grip good, but they were just lugging the motor down too much. This one on the transmitter has a high, low, and a medium throttle setting. Stock form out of the box, it would crawl with the stock tires, which were 55 millimeter, and it would only bog down in the really heavy stuff. You can see how much taller those are, and that little bit of difference actually makes a lot of difference in how much power it takes to pull these over hard terrain. So I ended up going back with just a tire that was as close to the stock as possible, because I did some research, and these are already geared down as low as you can get them. It has an 11-tooth pinion with a 55-tooth ring gear in the transmission. It has a 16-tooth ring gear in the differential, so you can't gear it down anymore to pull bigger tires like you can with 10th scale stuff. You can gear these up a little bit, but you can't gear them down any more than they already are. So the only other option is to add more horsepower to it. So I put one of these Endura motors in it, and first thing I noticed, and is also one of the complaints that other people had, is it takes a lot of throttle to get it spinning, but once it's going, you can back off and go slow. Alright, well I noticed it took about, probably, if I put it in the low setting, it took about half throttle to get it rolling, and it did have just a little bit of a jerk on takeoff, but after that you could let off the throttle and it would crawl along pretty slow. The motor is really strong. This is the 50 turn. I almost wish I would have went with the 66 turn, but I noticed that the magnets in this motor are incredibly strong, and when you're sitting there turning the motor over by hand, it has that cogging effect where it feels crunchy, and that's the magnets, you know, the magnetic poles gripping the armature and everything. But you notice that a lot in some of the older cobalt motors or whatever, but that's I think what makes this motor so hard to get it spinning is because of how strong the magnets are, and it has a cogging effect or cogging feel to it. But other than that, the motor is very much stronger than stock, and if you'll notice, you're supposed to cut out the front battery post right here. Well, all I did was I just took a Dremel and I just ground it out a little bit, just enough to clearance the motor, and I was still able to use my screw in it. This one has the metal portal axles that came with the metal tie rods and everything, and the steel wheels. This right here will go through anything that FMS truck will go through, and then some. It's hard to say which one actually has the best ground clearance as far as, not getting stuck, because the FMS truck has a little bit taller wheels on it. And I did try these on this one, and they worked pretty good. It's just these looked better, but it looked cool with the red tires on it, or red wheels on it. And lastly, this was the Jeep Rubicon, they call it the Gladiator. Alright, so this one was really cool. Okay, I'm going to make another project truck out of this one. So we're going to throw tires and wheels on it, maybe some portals and everything. And I noticed, I said, wow, that's a really long wheelbase on that. That's that thing's going to get high centered left and right. I mean, you can, let's see if I can get my camera. Okay, there we go. Now you can see there's quite a bit of difference in the wheelbase between this little Bronco and the Gladiator. And even this one, it's longer than this one too. So I figured this one's going to get stuck in the center a lot. But actually I was surprised that the long wheelbase, it has its curse, but it also has its blessings. I found that this, because of the longer wheelbase, there were certain things in my rock pile that it could go over, that it could get a grip and climb over and pull itself up on, that neither one of these other two could get up on. And I'm like, okay, and that's pretty good with the stock wheels, these little Nito trail grapplers, which I'm not real fond of. The lugs on them are not very deep. And I've got two sets of other takeoffs from the Bronco and from the Deadbolt. So I don't think I'm going to be putting portals on this one, but I am going to change the tires and wheels. I'll be using pretty much the exact same tires and wheels that are on this. The Mickey Thompson Bajas with the Endura steel wheels. I think I'm going to leave everything else the same. I'm going to put some shims on the springs to kind of stiffen it up. You can see how shaky this one is. But this one, because of the Lexan body, it's not as top heavy as the little Bronco was. So it's not as prone to rolling over as the Bronco is. So out of the box, I think this one was probably one of the best ones, because it's light up top, even though it has all this pretty gingerbread looking stuff all over it. That adds weight, but it looks cool, so I'll leave it there. But the Lexan body really helps on this one to keep the weight from up top. The Deadbolt, which actually, if you look at it, it's like a 1973 Ford Bronco. It's just not a licensed Ford product, so they can't say it's a Ford Bronco, but if you look at it, it is. But this one out of the box was really good too. And I was going to do basically the Axial version of the Power Wagon, so I had this J-Concepts Power Wagon body with Endura headlights on it. Again, Endura's goodies, and wired them in, so, and a little wooden simulated bed. So this body will probably end up back on that one, because it did look pretty tough on there. But I think my favorites out of all of these, as far as scale looks, the little Bronco is probably the best scale because of the hard body. I mean, the details on it are more realistic. That's just what you can get with a hard body versus Lexan. You can only get so much detail into a Lexan body unless you start adding parts to it. This one I really like. I was really impressed with the performance of this one, just bone stock right out of the box. And the Deadbolt. I think the Deadbolt was probably my absolute favorite out of all of them, but it became even more my favorite after the portal axles. And you can see what a difference in the width that makes as far as the wheelbase between these, between portal axles and non. This is with stock wheels. Let me get this camera up a little bit. Alright, so we have stock wheels versus the offset wheels. There we go. And you can see how much wider that is. And if you take two vehicles that have the same rims on them, and one has portals, one doesn't, and it's about a half a tire width difference. So, but there you have, that's kind of the differences and some of the things I've done to them. The portal axles on this really helped this one out a lot. I just wish that they were gear reduction. There is one set on Amazon that I found that has a gear reduction. Okay, we got a jet flying over, so. And you'll recognize those because the portal gearbox covers have 4 screws and it's kind of a rectangle shape. And they actually show a picture of the gears inside of there, and you can see that they are definitely a gear reduction. It's about a 1.3 to 1, so it's not a lot of gear reduction, but it is some, and that helps. And the more gear reduction you can get, the better the crawl. The slow speed on this, any of the axials pretty much, is just incredibly smooth. I mean, I have model trains, and this Jeep can creep almost as slow as some of my model trains, which is just incredibly slow. And it's very smooth, very quiet. One thing, the motor, this Endura motor that I put in here, it is noisy, and it's because of the cogging effect. It makes the gear mesh really loud. And there's a trick when you put this motor in, it comes with a little purple motor plate that you have to use because the mounting screws for the motor are about a 1/4 turn off from the stock motor. So you put the purple motor plate in, you have to take pretty much the whole transmission apart, or remove the transmission from the motor plate. You get the motor plate on, and then you bolt the motor to it. You set the spur gear on the shaft. You snug the screws down, but don't tighten them because you need to be able to move the motor. Once you have the motor snugged onto the motor plate, slide the spur gear, the ring gear, onto the shaft, set the mesh, and tighten the one screw that you can get to. The other screw is going to be halfway underneath the edge of the spur gear. So tighten the outer screw first after you get the motor, the gear mesh set. Once the mesh is set and you're satisfied with that, pull the spur gear off, tighten the other screw, and then reassemble everything. So don't try to snake the Allen wrench into that screw head under the edge of that spur gear, or you're going to mess up the teeth on it. So other than that, the motor install was pretty easy. Now, I said I was going to show you the easy way to do this, because when you put portal axles on something, now you have added gears here, and it changes the rotation of the tire. So when you go forward, it's going to go backwards. So what you do is, this is the easy way. Don't unsolder nothing off your motors. Just pull the plug, take an X-Acto knife, and there's little tabs right there. You'll know which side it is. It's not that side. It's the side where you can see the little contacts. You just take an X-Acto knife and gently get it under that tab, lift it up, pull the wire out. Do that to both, and just switch the wires in the plug, and then you plug it back in. That easy. No soldering. Nice and clean install. So, and that's pretty much it for that one. So in the next video, just to keep this from being a 2-hour long video, I will do some rock crawling with some of these and kind of do a little bit of a comparison with them, and you'll see which ones work the best. They all work really good, and each one has, you know, things about it that seems to work better than the other, but they all work good. None of these are bad crawlers. Like I said, though, the Team Associated one, you know, it's not my favorite. It's not the greatest, but it's not bad. So if you on a budget and you just want to spend, you know, under $100, you can't beat this little truck for under $100. I mean, it does work good, and the electronics are good, and it runs for a long time. I think this one probably runs for about an hour. And as far as these others, everybody says, oh, they run for about 30 minutes, 40 minutes. No, I get about an hour out of them. Even these rock crawler, I call it all rock crawlers, the FMS Power Wagons, I get over an hour with those. If you stay in low gear and you're just going really slow, you can just do crawling, you'll get tired of playing with it before the battery goes dead. And you'll want to go do something else. So that's going to wrap it up for this, and then we'll come back on the next video, part 2, and we'll have some rock crawling fun. All right, later.